Yo, what's going on, gamers? Trend 6 days a week, and I know things have been a little crazy for Ironmace and Darker in the last month, but even more news came out in just the last week that I find is pretty wild. In this video, we're going to be talking about the end to Darker Mobile, the layoffs and restructuring Ironmace has gone through in the last 2 months, and the next steps Ironmace is taking in changing the game and the community around it. Alright, let's jump right into it. So, if you did not know, a year and a half ago, Krafton, the creator of PUBG, bought exclusive global rights to Darker Mobile. Though the financials were never publicly released, this likely means they paid a lump sum plus signed off on some royalties for the exclusive rights of using the Darker name and IP in their mobile development. This was finalized back in August 2023. Now, just last week, Krafton has terminated that agreement. Darker Mobile will no longer exist and instead will be released under a different name. It does sound like everything else about the game will be the same, they're just separating themselves from the Darker title. Krafton officials also stated that their decision to terminate the agreement and change the name of their mobile game is unrelated to the legal disputes or rulings. Now, SDF on the Ironmace side also said the same thing, essentially stating that the lawsuit does not affect the game's service or maintenance and really just takes a lot of time from him and the key team members, which in a way I believe kind of affects the game's service and maintenance, but of course could be just an issue of translation here. Now, he also says that the contract regarding the mobile game is being terminated by mutual agreement at the request of Krafton, and there will not be any losses for Ironmace, reinforcing the fact that it was probably more of a lump sum contract, just paid up front, and royalties were going to be a very small part of it, if any. Again, no official numbers were given. Anything that you hear about online regarding this contract and the finances around it is going to be just speculation. All we know for sure is that Krafton has separated themselves from Ironmace with the termination of this mobile game contract. Alright, now let's talk about the layoffs and terminations that have recently happened in Ironmace since they're now publicly speaking on it. Do you know that SDF stated that these layoffs were unrelated to the lawsuit, which I do believe since they technically happened before the final verdict on February 13th. There are 2 cases in particular I do want to talk about since they had very close ties to the community of Darker. The first is Faseb, who was an Ironmace community coordinator. He also personally stated that he was the creator of the Knights program and was a primary figure in the game's PvP balance. I bring up these 2 points just to show how much trust Ironmace had in Faseb. Had is the key word here. Faseb was fired in late January for exploiting company information for personal gain. So yeah, it is as crazy as it sounds, and I do think Ironmace is justified in removing Faseb from their company. In many industries, especially in the US, this actually could lead you into some pretty heavy legal trouble. Now, the second termination I do want to talk about was just made public 2 days ago, and it was Soma, the head of marketing and the co-host and founder of the Darkest Hour. For those who are just YouTube watchers and have never really touched Twitch, the Darkest Hour is a podcast that was one of the first groups of people to ever interview the Ironmace CEO and lead dev. It's actually where I get a lot of my information for all my update videos. Soma has been a massive part of the community, especially in the creator space, since the very start of the game. Now, Soma is very much locked behind an NDA, which is unfortunate to us as the viewers from the outside, as we don't get all the juicy details on what happened. All we really know is that there's some sort of disagreement in communication. I gotta be honest with you here, my personal theory is that Soma and marketing in general was getting personally roadblocked by SDF. I do know when Soma first joined the team, there seemed to be a lot more customer outreach. There was a Summer Games Fest, the trailers associated with that, Twitch drops, developer interviews, partner cosmetics, and large streamer collaborations. In the last couple months, we really haven't seen any of that. And data that I've gathered, and what has been shared with us from the CEO of Ironmace, all point to the fact that the game is quite top heavy, as in there's not many new players here to support the longevity of the game. A lot of the players are sitting at above 1,000 hours. Now, I know this is just a small subset of the Darker community as a whole, but I do think we can all agree Ironmace needs to focus a little bit more on marketing and community management, since at this current moment the game carries a pretty heavily negative sentiment. But hey, this video is not all doom and gloom, since we did get confirmation that Hotfix number 80 will be released this week with some pretty large changes. In Hotfix 80, both the Goblin Caves and Runes maps will be receiving the randomized dungeon feature, so all the modules will be scrambled, and I believe there will be Fog of War. In addition, we will be seeing some new perks and spells for the Sorcerer, marking the completion of the Sorcerer development. So beyond that, I think we will start seeing some perk and skill changes to the other classes and some development progress being made to the Monk class, which is next in line. And finally, the last change that I know is coming in Hotfix 80, as it was posted by SDF himself, is that normal and high roller will be separated. I don't know what that means entirely, but it sounds like high roller mode will be returning to its original vision, which was quite hardcore. I don't know which original high roller SDF is talking about here, but the very first edition of high roller was, of course, no goblin returning system, so no insurance. It had an entry fee, and there was absolutely no gear bracketing. Not too long ago too, there was a version of high roller that didn't have any kind of nameplates, but I don't know if that's going to be included in this hardcore vision. We'll just have to wait and see. Now for some stuff that will happen after Hotfix 80, it sounds like bunny hop and movement speed are going to finally be addressed, which, you know, they've been saying that for a couple months now. Take that with a grain of salt. And it looks like the Tavern Table Devcast will be getting a second episode to discuss the current changes to this wipe, and also some new content that we should expect to see in the next wipe, which I'm pretty excited for. I think these are great community events, and it's a good way to fill in all the details of what we should be expecting and get hyped for in the upcoming seasons. Now, before I wrap up this video, there is one question I want to address, since I do get it DM'd to me quite a lot, especially from returning players or potentially returning players. The question is Dark and Darker dead? Because, you know, I've been pretty negative in these last videos, or it's been perceived as negative. I try to just be as honest as I can. Sometimes that comes off as very positive, sometimes that comes off as very negative, sometimes somewhere in between. But is Dark and Darker dead? No, absolutely not. Dark and Darker is not dead. But what I can say is Dark and Darker is struggling to grow, and it's been showing in the player numbers for quite some time. Now, this is both a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing is obvious, right? Players aren't rapidly leaving the game anymore. That seemed to happen quite early on into the release of Early Access as well as the Steam release, but for the most part has stabled out now. It's also pretty natural for a new game release to have a huge spike of players and then a massive exodus. The reasons why this is bad is pretty obvious too. In the last half year of development, though there have been some pretty significant changes, in my opinion, to the game's main systems, the game hasn't grown at all. If you look at Rust or any other continuously developed and wiped game, the player base generally ticks up every single wipe or update. So yeah, the game is struggling, but it's certainly not dead. Well, not dead as of now. We'll see what happens this week. It does sound like that some of the changes are going to be a lot more intense than they appear. Whenever SDF throws around the word vision, I do get a little bit scared, since it gives me some flashbacks of Hotfix 69, but honestly, at this point, I'm just excited for any kind of change. Alright gamers, that's all I have for this video. Stay tuned if you want to hear about Hotfix 80, since I'll cover it as soon as it happens. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.